Morality and ethics in video games is a hotly debated topic among scholars, politicians, and critics alike. They offer a very interactive form of entertainment and a unique ability for people to interact with a virtual environment in a way that no other form of media can achieve. Many video games feature linear stories and characters that unfold in one way regardless of the player's actions or strategies. But some, particularly those of the RPG genre, are different. They allow the player to make moral decisions that can drastically affect the game, its story, and its characters. This unique characteristic of moral interactivity is what makes the game genre distinct from most others, as it incorporates the player's own morality and decisions into the story. This keeps the player morally engaged in the story and the gameplay, resulting in decisions made in accordance to one's own moral values. But how does a game keep a player morally invested in its gameplay? And why should a player be morally invested anyway? After all, it is, in essence, just a game. All decisions made will lead to no real-world consequences. Well, to begin, in a book entitled The Ethics of Computer Games, Dr. Miguel Sicart, a doctorate in game studies, says that even after stepping into a virtual world, players are still capable of reflecting on the nature of their acts within the game's world. This implies that while playing video games, particularly those that have moral consequences for actions, players are still constrained by their morality to an extent. Video games also use a few ways of making the player feel like their input is meaningful. This can be done via programming the game's non-player characters, or NPCs, to react to the player's decisions in many ways to stimulate emotion or autonomy. It can even rely on music to invoke a particular emotion. Many times, games even offer a sense of moral ambiguity, that is, the introduction of gray areas into decisions where the player is uncertain of what the right decision actually is. The characters in the game itself can also provide engagement to the player, especially if the player is rewarded for interacting with them. Altogether, these themes contribute to the player's immersion and perception of the world that is displayed on screen, making everything feel alive and living as if it were an actual, functioning alternative reality. One game in particular, Mass Effect, is a perfect example of a game that exhibits a decision-based narrative and allows the player to interact and alter the universe in accordance to decisions and relationships made. Headed by Casey Hudson and lead writer Drew Karpshin, Mass Effect is a science fiction action RPG developed by Canadian-based company BioWare and published by Electronic Arts. The events of the Mass Effect trilogy take place over the span of 3 years, from 2183 until 2186, and follows the story of a customizable character named Commander Shepard. Shepard's gender, service history, childhood, and appearance are all established in the customization menu. Shepard's relationships, personality...
Activate the neutron purge.
I'm sorry, but I can't do that without proper code authorization.
Sic semper
and morality are all determined by the player's story and dialogue choices throughout the trilogy, essentially making Commander Shepard a virtual rendition of the player themselves.
Hit me again, asshole. Every punch is another
Works
credit.
for me.
Throughout the trilogy, players are faced with decisions that will drastically affect the storylines and interactions they will have in the subsequent titles. Considering Commander Shepard's prestige as the first human Spectre, an elite group of operatives selected by the Citadel Council themselves, he or she serves as an advocate and representative for humanity. If the player were to make a decision that negatively affects other races, for instance, the other race in particular that was affected will have a more hostile disposition toward humanity. Take, for example, Commander Shepard's choice regarding the fate of the Citadel Council at the end of the first Mass Effect title. The player is faced with a very important decision. They can either save the Council, who have doubted and given Shepard complication at every step along the way during his or her pursuit of Saren Arterius, the main antagonist of the first game, or they can save the Council, but at the expense of countless human lives. To further complicate this decision, saving the Council comes at the cost of the Alliance Fleet War asset, which is extremely essential in the third game. Some humans will even have distasteful opinions toward the player for placing alien lives above human lives.
You've saved more alien lives than you have human. And all I've seen you do is end lives. You're gonna make a lousy me.
Sources claim you were at the heart of the Presidium during the Battle of the Citadel. It's fair to say the course of the battle hinged on your words. If true, you told Admiral Hackett to assist the Destiny Ascension, costing hundreds of human lives, and securing the continued dominance of the Citadel Council.
The Turians lost 20 cruisers. Figure each had a crew around 300. The Ascension, the Asari dreadnought we saved, had a crew of nearly 10,000.
But surely the human cost.
The Alliance lost 8 cruisers. Shenyang, Emden, Jakarta, Cairo, Seoul, Cape Town, Warsaw, Madrid. And yes, I remembered them all.
However, if the player sacrifices the Council, they will be met with hostility from every other race, and humanity will be frowned upon. Not only this, but the Destiny Ascension, the most powerful ship in the galaxy, will be destroyed, and severely hinder your war assets in the third game.
A human. Your kind is always shoving your way in to solve the galaxy's problems, aren't you?
Not only does this lead to a drastic narrative outcome for a single decision, but it also offers a gray area in morality. Save a group of people who have given you trouble but offered you a chance to prove your worth, or look after and protect your own people. This leads me to my next topic of moral ambiguity. Video games have the ability to make the morality of decisions appear ambiguous. When this happens, the player is forced to make a decision that they may or may not feel is the right one until its effects come into play. There are several moments throughout the Mass Effect trilogy that contain these gray areas in decision-making.
Before you deal with our children, we stand before you. What will you sing? Will you release us? Are we to fade away once more?
One such moment is in Mass Effect 1 when the player is given the opportunity to either free or kill the Rachni Queen on Noveria. The Rachni were a brutal sentient race controlled by a central intelligence called the Queen. They were so powerful, in fact, that the Solarians relied on the Krogan, another brutal race perfectly fit to do one thing:
wage war.
The Krogan, once uplifted and given the advanced technology possessed by the Solarians, fought the Rachni to near extinction.
There are acid tanks rigged up on that thing. Set them off. Millions of my ancestors died to put these things down.
The Rachni Queen is in considerable distress when she is visited by the player and begs them to be set free, promising that they will keep to themselves and not make the same mistakes their ancestors once did. Shepard is then faced with a morally ambiguous decision. He or she can kill the Rachni Queen, dooming an entire race to extinction but safely avoiding another costly Rachni war, or set the Rachni Queen free, preserving their species but risking another galactic conflict with the Rachni once they regain their numbers.
Is this report accurate, Commander? You found Rachni on Noveria?
And then release the Queen. Do you have any idea what you've done? How many generations until they overrun the galaxy?
Another morally ambiguous decision is deciding whether or not to cure the genophage in Mass Effect 3. Following the Krogan victory in the Rachni War, the Krogan began to reproduce at an alarming rate, roughly 1,000 offspring per every female. Being naturally aggressive and keen to warfare, the Krogan then began a long, hard conflict with the other races, which would come to be known as the Krogan Rebellions. Eventually, the Solarians and Turians decided to release a biological disease among the Krogan population called the genophage. The disease affects Krogan females, allowing only 1 in every 1,000 newborns to survive birth. Although unethical, the decision was deemed necessary to preserve the galactic balance.
Modified genophage project great in scope, scientifically brilliant, but ethically difficult. Krogan reaction visceral, tragic, not guilty, but responsible. Trained as doctor, genophage affects fertility, doesn't kill.
In Mass Effect 3, the Council requests the aid of the Krogan to help them fight the Reapers on their own planet, to which they accept, but under one condition.
Just tell us what you want. I'll tell you what I need. A cure for the genophage.
This decision is particularly difficult because by curing the genophage, Shepard would be making the same decision made countless years ago by the Solarians when they turned to the Krogan in desperation to aid them. Shepard can either cure the genophage, or take a secret deal from the Dalatras to merely fake curing it, manipulating the Krogan to fight alongside the Turians, but also eliminating the possibility of another Krogan rebellion. This decision has an impact on the game's universe following its ending.
It wasn't the Solarians, or the Asari, or even the Turians that stopped the Rachni. It was Krogan blood that turned the tide.
And after that, you ceased to be useful.
But these are not the only examples of moral ambiguity in Mass Effect. Perhaps one of the most morally ambiguous characters in the game, and possibly in all of video gaming, is the Elusive Man. Making his first visual appearance in Mass Effect 2, the Elusive Man is an enigmatic character who runs a massive pro-human organization known as Cerberus. Its goal is to make humanity the dominant species of the galaxy. Commonly regarded as a racist terrorist organization by the Alliance and other races of the galaxy, Cerberus is an organization that strives to make breakthroughs for humanity and serve as its advocate when the Alliance and Citadel Council fail to place humanity's interests alongside their own. In fact, when Shepard dies at the beginning of Mass Effect 2, the Elusive Man understands the importance of Shepard's existence for humanity as a whole, and spends 2 whole years and billions of dollars putting him back together in what came to be known as the Lazarus Project. Willing to take highly unethical actions in pursuit of a common good, the Elusive Man is a character who truly believes that the ends justify the means, a concept that Soren Kierkegaard refers to as the teleological suspension of the ethical in his book Fear and Trembling. For instance, in Mass Effect 2, the Elusive Man contacts Shepard and informs them that the Turians have successfully disabled the Collector ship, offering a rare opportunity to examine the Collector's technology, which could hold the key in understanding what the series' main antagonist, a fleet of ancient sentient starships called the Reapers, are capable of. Long story short, Shepard finds out that the Elusive Man had knowingly sent them into a trap. The ship awakens and the enemies within begin to attack, resulting in a long and hard battle to escape. Once out, there is an interesting exchange with the Elusive Man where Shepard confronts him with his knowledge of the Collector's trap and that he had deliberately led the Normandy's crew into an ambush, to which the Elusive Man responds,
"I needed the Collectors to believe they had the upper hand. Telling you could have tipped them off in any number of ways. Besides, I wouldn't have sent you in if I didn't think you could succeed."
The Elusive Man is also what Kierkegaard would refer to as a knight of infinite resignation. He fits this title because he sacrifices, or resigns, everything he loves and values, concentrating the meaning of life into one single wish: to understand and control the Reapers.
That's what separates us, Shepard. Where you see a means to destroy, I see a way to control, to dominate and harness the Reaper's power. Imagine how strong humanity would be if we controlled them.
An example is in Mass Effect 2's Project Overlord DLC, where Shepard travels to a garden world and finds out that unethical experiments that involved forcing an unwilling person's conscience into the Geth consensus were being held.
Square root of 912.04 is 30.2. It all seemed harmless. Square root of 912.04 is 30.2. It all seemed harmless.
In the third Mass Effect title, the Elusive Man is seen going off the deep end as he performs truly unethical acts to achieve his idea of a common good, such as luring war-torn human refugees into a sanctuary colony where he then performs unethical experiments on them, turning them into Geth husks to then find ways to communicate with Reaper foot soldiers. Cerberus can also be found kidnapping biotic students from Grissom Academy, a school for adolescents and young adults who are gifted in their biotic abilities. On the topic of Grissom Academy, Shepard can even come across a familiar face, if the player chose to save him.
The square root of 906.01 equals
30.1.
Hello, Commander Shepard.
The result is a brief but touching interaction between Shepard and David Archer, the man whose brain was forcibly connected to the Geth computer in Project Overlord.
Has Grissom Academy been all right?
Yes. I've been counting.
Anything in particular?
The number of days you lengthened my life.
One aspect about this scene that is rather interesting is the subtle use of the same soundtrack from the second game's DLC when Shepard first meets David, promoting a stronger emotional response from the player.
Quiet. Please, make it stop.
He rescued me from Cerberus. Sent me here. He made it quiet.
The use of music in video games is often able to successfully elicit a desired response or playstyle from the player, as would a study at the University at Waterloo concluded when playing different music to players who played the same segment of a particular video game. For example, Games like Doom use a deep heavy metal soundtrack to encourage aggressive playstyles and make the player feel ruthless, unstoppable, and inconceivably powerful. Meanwhile, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, in games like Journey, the music guides the gameplay at a pace at which the player moves, its most powerful scores even evoking somewhat of an emotion toward a nameless, silent, and flat character. Mass Effect uses a variety of these sorts of musical variations throughout its cinematics, playing an essential role in keeping the player emotionally and morally engaged, which, according to Dr. Daniel Schaefer of Baylor University, is essential since if a player is emotionally disengaged from the game, they will act less ethically in their decisions, dismissing their actions as being inconsequential since it is just a game. There are more than a few moments throughout the 3 games where music sets the mood for the scene. Mass Effect 2's Suicide Mission track is a nerve-wracking and intense piece. Its cinematic hits building tension as every decision the player makes will either lead to life or death of any or all of their teammates. Then, for the most emotional moments, such as the soft piano in Mass Effect 3's I'm Proud of You that, for massive endgame spoiler reasons, I will not include the context to, but creates a very emotional final moment between Shepard and one of the characters present since the very beginning of the first game. Or the thundering orchestral hits of Leaving Earth that leaves the player feeling helpless and hopeless as they are forced to leave their beloved homeworld behind as it burns from the initial impact of the Reaper invasion. Overall, music in games is important because the type of music that is being played will set the mood and determine how the player will feel and react.
My turn.
Mass Effect is a game that exercises several aspects of morality and forces the player to make decisions based off of said morality. Its history, dialogue, soundtrack, and overall interactivity are what make it the game that it is and contributes to the common understanding of what morality means. But why is this important, you might ask? Well, according to Dr. Kathy Sanford at the University of Victoria in British Columbia, Canada, video games force players to utilize a variety of problem-solving skills to achieve a desired goal. The implication behind this is that puzzles in games help challenge players to put the pieces together and further develop their analytical or critical thinking skills. It also means that abstract concepts such as morality can also be explored, allowing for a way to influence or challenge a player's thoughts. This, in turn, leads to greater moral awareness in real life when the players are faced with an issue that requires a decision based off of a moral concept. Characters such as the Elusive Man are good ways of showing that although they may seem inherently bad, many people who commit morally questionable acts simply want what's best for what they believe is the common good, but have lost their way somewhere along the road, whether it be falling victim to mental illness or taking a turn into irrationality. This sort of character is what can help players realize that actions always have underlying motives that drive them. Regardless of one's thoughts on the Elusive Man, the Mass Effect trilogy, or even video gaming in general, the impact that video games have had on popular culture and public morality cannot be underestimated, and it is a constant conversation. Some argue that video games may be bad, saying that exposure to virtual violence could desensitize players to actual violence or negatively affect their moral thinking. Personally, I believe video games such as Mass Effect are a way to explore possibilities and challenge one's perceptions of the world safely from within a controlled environment. By gaining a better understanding of morality and the motives behind people's behavior, an epiphany is achieved. Everyone is the good guy of the story from their own point of view, just as the Elusive Man believed that what he was doing was truly for the betterment of mankind, and how the player, Commander Shepard, views their own actions they make as contributing to the common good.
I've had enough of your snide insinuations.
You didn't honestly think I was going to make a Mass Effect video without including a clip of punching the reporter, did you?